The email arrived on a Tuesday afternoon while I was reviewing foundation drawings for a museum renovation downtown. Subject line blank. Sender: Marcus Holbrook. The name alone made me sit back from my desk. I had not heard from Marcus in 8 months, not since we shared bourbon at the annual AIA conference in Denver. The body of the email contained 3 sentences. Your boy applied to us, didn't mention you anywhere, thought you should know. I read it twice. Then I closed my laptop and stood at my window overlooking the harbor. Seagulls circled the ferry terminal. A container ship moved slow as geography toward the horizon. My son's resume sat somewhere in Marcus's office, stripped of my name, scrubbed of any connection that might suggest advantage or legacy. The audacity of it settled in my chest like a stone. He had told me once, maybe 6 months prior, that my reputation would be a liability for him, that the industry had moved past my generation's obsession with classical proportion and material honesty, that firms wanted innovation, not the dated rigor I still clung to. I remember the precise angle of his chin when he said it, the way he looked past me toward his own reflection in the window. I had built my career across 30 years with patience and a pencil. I started as a draftsman in a 4-person studio that smelled like ammonia and dust. I learned to draw by hand before computers turned every elevation into a rendering. I learned to listen to clients and contractors and the grain of the wood itself. My buildings stand in 7 states. One of them won a national award. Another was featured in a documentary about adaptive reuse. I did not chase fame. I chased work that aged well and served its purpose without apology. My son graduated with honors from a private architecture school that cost more than my first house. He returned home with a portfolio full of parametric facades and algorithmic form studies. He spoke in the language of computational design and material science, as if concrete and steel had been invented after he was born. He took a junior role at a mid-sized firm and spent his evenings on side projects, renderings that looked like jewelry stores designed by glaciers. We lived in the same city but occupied different worlds. His mother had passed 4 years earlier. Cancer that moved fast and left us both hollowed out in ways we never discussed. He took her death as permission to distance himself further. I took it as a reminder that silence is its own kind of ending. We met for dinner once a month. The conversation rarely lasted beyond appetizers. The arrogance had crept in gradually, the way rot works through old timber. First it was small corrections. I would mention a project, and he would interrupt with a citation from some design blog or a lecture he had attended. Then it became dismissals. When I showed him sketches for a library expansion, he scrolled through them on his phone and said they looked like something from the 90s. I asked what decade he thought good design expired. He did not answer. The breaking point came at a family gathering last Thanksgiving. My brother asked about my work, and I mentioned a residential project in the countryside, a house clad in local stone with deep overhangs and a courtyard that framed a single oak tree. My son laughed. Not a polite chuckle, but a sharp, performative bark. He said that kind of architecture was nostalgia dressed up as craft. That clients only wanted it because they did not know better. That if I understood contemporary practice, I would see how irrelevant my approach had become. I set my fork down. The table went quiet. I looked at him across the cranberry sauce and said nothing. He met my eyes and shrugged, as if his cruelty was simply honesty, and I was too old to recognize the difference. I excused myself early. I did not call him for 2 months after that. Marcus Holbrook and I went back to graduate school. We shared a studio desk and a crumbling off-campus apartment with a furnace that only worked on Wednesdays. He went west after graduation and built a practice in Seattle that became one of the most respected firms on the coast. We stayed in touch the way old friends do, trading emails about projects and occasional calls when one of us needed advice. He knew my work. He knew my son existed but had never met him. I reopened my laptop and read the email again. Then I called Marcus. He picked up on the second ring. Traffic noise in the background, the hiss of rain on pavement. "I figured you'd call," he said. "Tell me." He applied 3 weeks ago. Resume came through the portal like everyone else. Good school, decent portfolio, but nothing that made him stand out. I was reviewing the short list this morning and saw his last name. Took me a minute to connect it. Then I checked the application. No mention of you, not in his cover letter, not in his references, nowhere. "What did you do?" "Nothing yet. I wanted to talk to you first." He paused. "You want me to toss it?" "No." "You sure?" "I am." Marcus was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "What are you thinking?" "I am thinking he made a choice. I want to see where it leads." "Fair enough. I will keep you posted." I thanked him and hung up. Outside my window, the light was starting to fail. I sat there until the room grew dark, thinking about the space between what we build and what we leave behind. My son had always been bright. Teachers used words like gifted and advanced. He tested into accelerated programs and earned scholarships that opened doors I never had. I was proud of him in the uncomplicated way parents are when their children exceed them. But somewhere in his 20s, the brightness curdled into arrogance. Intelligence became a weapon. Achievement became a shield against humility. I tried to trace it back to a single moment, but could not. Maybe it was the divorce between his mother and me when he was 12. Maybe it was the pressure of her illness. Maybe it was nothing I did or failed to do. Maybe he simply grew into the man he wanted to be, and that man had no room for me. I thought about calling him, asking him directly why he had hidden my name. But I already knew the answer. He did not want the stain of association. Did not want anyone to think his talent was inherited or his opportunities unearned. He wanted to be self-made in a profession where no one is ever truly self-made, where every career is a lattice of mentorship and reference and quiet advocacy. I decided to wait. 2 weeks later, Marcus called again. "We are moving him to the second round. In-person interview next Thursday. Thought you should know." "Who else is on the panel?" "Me, 2 senior associates, and the HR director. Standard setup." "Will you tell him?" "That you are my friend? Not unless you want me to." "I do not." "Then I will keep it clean. But if he makes it to the final round, I will need to disclose the connection. Conflict of interest policy." "Understood." "You are playing a long game here." "I am." "You think he will learn something?" "I think he will learn what he needs to learn." Marcus laughed, low and knowing. "You always were patient." The interview was scheduled for 2 in the afternoon. I knew because my son mentioned it in a brief text message 3 days prior. He did not ask for advice, did not invite commentary, just stated the fact like a weather report. I responded with 2 words: "Good luck." I spent that Thursday morning in meetings about a mixed-use development on the waterfront. Affordable housing on the lower floors, market-rate condos above, retail at street level. The developer wanted maximum density. I was arguing for courtyards and setbacks that would let light reach the ground. We went back and forth for 2 hours. I won some points and lost others. Compromise is the architecture of the real world. At 1:45, I checked my phone. No messages. I imagined my son in a conference room with views of Elliott Bay, his portfolio spread across a table, Marcus asking questions in his careful, measured way. I wondered if my son could feel the weight of the room, the scrutiny of people who had built their careers in the same trenches I had. I wondered if he sensed the ghost of me in the space. Marcus called me that evening. He did well. Confident, articulate, good technical knowledge. The associates liked his portfolio. Fresh thinking. But there is a certain tone, a dismissiveness when talking about precedent, like history is something that happened to other people. One of the associates asked him about influences, and he name-dropped 3 architects under 40. Nothing before that. Did you ask him about me? No, I kept it professional, but I am watching. What happens next? Final round in 10 days. That is when I will have to tell him. I thanked him and hung up. I poured myself a glass of water and stood on my back deck. The evening was cool and clear. Across the water, city lights began to flicker on like distant signals. I thought about what it meant to be seen, to be known, to have your name carry weight whether you wanted it to or not. My son did not call to tell me he had advanced. I learned it from Marcus. That absence spoke louder than any words. The weekend before the final interview, I drove out to the site of a house I had designed 12 years earlier. The clients had contacted me the week before about an addition. Their family had grown, and they needed more space. I wanted to see how the house had aged, how the materials had weathered, whether my decisions had held up under time and use. The house sat on a wooded lot east of the city, cedar siding gone silver in the salt air, deep eaves that kept rain off the windows, a stone chimney that anchored the west wall. I walked the perimeter slowly, noting the way the roof drained, the way the foundation had settled, the way the plantings had matured and softened the edges. The clients met me at the door. We talked for an hour about their lives and their needs. Their daughter was starting high school. Their son was learning piano. They wanted a space that could hold both practice and homework, a room that felt connected to the rest of the house, but could be closed off when necessary. I took notes and measurements. I sketched options on graph paper at their kitchen table. They made coffee, and we talked about materials and light and the way a house should grow with the people inside it. Driving home, I thought about my son's dismissal of this kind of work, the way he saw it as small and predictable, the way he could not recognize that every house is a negotiation with time, that every good building is a conversation between need and possibility. I had tried to teach him this. I had taken him to job sites as a teenager, shown him how to read drawings, explained the logic behind every joint and flashing and detail. He had listened with one ear and spent the rest of his attention elsewhere. Marcus called on Tuesday. Final interview is Thursday morning, 9 sharp. I will need to disclose our connection at the start of the meeting. Firm policy. How will you frame it? I will say we went to school together and have stayed in touch professionally, that I have followed your work and hold you in high regard, that I wanted to be transparent before we proceed. And then? And then we see how he handles it. You think he will walk out? No, but I think he will be uncomfortable. And I think that discomfort will tell us something. Thank you, Marcus. You know I am doing this because I respect you, not because I want to embarrass him. I know. But if he is half the architect he thinks he is, he will earn this on his own. Agreed. Thursday morning I woke early and went for a run along the waterfront. The air was cold and damp. My breath came out in clouds. I passed joggers and dog walkers and a man playing saxophone for change. I thought about my son sitting in that conference room, learning that his father's name had been in the room all along. I thought about what he would feel. Anger, maybe. Shame, possibly. Or perhaps just calculation, a quick adjustment of strategy. I did not know which response I hoped for. Maybe all of them. Marcus called at 11. It is done. Tell me. I disclosed the connection right at the start. Said we were old friends, that I had not known he was your son until I saw the application. He went pale. Tried to keep his composure, but you could see it. Asked if that was a problem. I said it was not a problem, but that I wanted everything above board. How did the rest go? He was rattled. Answers were shorter. Lost some of that confidence. The associates asked him about his approach to historic renovation, and he fumbled. Gave a generic answer about respecting context, but did not have specifics. I asked him if he had consulted your work on the Belltown project, and he admitted he had not. Did you press him? No. I let it sit. But the room felt it. By the end, he was apologizing for things that did not need apologies. It was uncomfortable. What now? We will make our decision by Monday. He is still in the running, but it is close. There is another candidate with less flash but more maturity. It could go either way. I sat with that for a moment. Then I asked, what would you do if I were not involved? Honestly, I would take the other candidate. Your son has talent, but he is not ready. He needs a few more years to burn off the ego. Then that is what you should do. Marcus was quiet. Then he said, You are sure? I am. All right, I will call him Monday. I thanked him and ended the call. I sat at my desk and looked at the drawing pinned to my wall. A section through the library expansion. Pencil on trace, every line deliberate, every dimension checked twice. I thought about the years it had taken to learn how to draw like that. The mistakes and corrections and quiet hours of practice. The humility required to admit you do not know something and then go learn it. My son called that afternoon. I let it ring 3 times before answering. I need to talk to you, he said. His voice was tight. I am listening. Did you know about Marcus? I did. Silence. Then, why did you not tell me? You did not ask. That is not fair. You did not mention my name in your application. That seems fair. He exhaled hard. I wanted to do this on my own. And how is that working out? Another silence, longer this time. I do not know if I am going to get the job. Maybe you will. Maybe you will not. That is all you have to say? What do you want me to say? I do not know. Something. I thought about all the things I could tell him. About patience and humility and the slow accumulation of respect. About the way a reputation is built across decades, not in the flash of a single portfolio. About the fact that every architect who matters has stood on the shoulders of those who came before, whether they admit it or not. But I did not say any of that. Instead I said, you are talented, but talent is not enough. I know that. Do you? He did not answer. If Marcus offers you the job, take it. If he does not, learn from it. Either way, you will be fine. You do not sound angry. I am not angry. I am tired. Of what? Of being treated like I am irrelevant. He was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, I never said you were irrelevant. You did not have to. I heard him breathe on the other end of the line. Then he said, I am sorry. For what, specifically? For not listing you, for not asking your advice, for being an asshole at Thanksgiving. That is a start. Will you forgive me? Eventually, but not today. Fair enough, we hung up. I sat in the fading light and felt something shift inside me. Not forgiveness, exactly, but a loosening, a small crack in the wall I had built. Marcus called Monday morning. We are offering it to the other candidate. Your son is strong, but he is not ready. I am going to call him this afternoon with the news. Will you tell him why? I will tell him he needs more experience, that his technical skills are solid, but that we are looking for someone who can integrate into a collaborative culture. I will keep it professional. Good. For what it is worth, I think this will be good for him. A little humility goes a long way. I hope you're right. You did the right thing, not interfering. I did not do anything. Exactly. My son texted me that evening. Did not get the job. 3 words. No elaboration. I responded with, Their loss. I did not believe it entirely, but it felt like the right thing to say. A week later, he called and asked if we could meet for coffee. I agreed. We sat in a cafe near the university, the kind of place with chalkboard menus and baristas who took their work seriously. He looked tired. The sharpness in his eyes had dulled. "I have been thinking," he said. About? About what you said, about talent not being enough. I nodded. "I think I have been an idiot." "You have been young." "That is generous." "It is accurate." He stirred his coffee. "Marcus told me I need more experience, that I came across as arrogant." "Did he use that word?" "No, but that is what he meant." "And what do you think?" "I think he was right." He looked up at me. "I think you were right." I did not respond immediately. I let the words settle. Then I said, "What are you going to do about it?" "I do not know yet. Maybe look for a smaller firm. Somewhere I can learn instead of trying to prove something." "That sounds wise." "Will you help me?" I considered the question. Thought about the years of distance and the weight of all the things we had not said to each other. Then I said, "Yes, but not the way you think." "What do you mean?" "I will not make calls for you. I will not open doors. But I will teach you what I know. If you want to learn." He looked at me for a long time. Then he nodded. "I want to learn." We finished our coffee and walked out into the cold afternoon. The streets were crowded with students and tourists and people going about their ordinary lives. We walked in silence for a while, and then he asked me about the library project. I told him about the site constraints and the budget and the client's vision. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he asked a question about the structural system. It was a good question. We talked for an hour, standing on a corner near the ferry terminal, while the wind came off the water and the light started to fail. For the first time in years, the conversation felt easy. Not repaired, exactly, but beginning to mend. Over the following months, we met regularly. I showed him drawings and walked him through projects. I explained the thinking behind material choices and spatial sequences. I introduced him to contractors and engineers and clients. I let him see the unglamorous parts of the work, the budget meetings, and the permit reviews, and the compromises that shape every building. He took a job at a small firm that specialized in residential additions and small commercial renovations. The work was modest but honest. He learned to detail a window flashing and coordinate with a plumber, and talk to a client who could not articulate what they wanted but knew it when they saw it. He learned to listen. One evening, 6 months after the interview with Marcus, we stood together on the site of a house I was designing in the foothills. The foundation was poured, and the framing was going up. The light was golden and low, casting long shadows across the studs and joists. "It is beautiful," he said. "It is a frame. But you can see it, the whole thing, even now." "That is the job." He nodded. We stood there in the cooling air and watched the carpenters pack up their tools. Then he said, "Thank you." "For what?" "For not bailing me out, for letting me fail." "You did not fail. You learned." "Same thing." "Not quite." We walked back to our cars in the fading light. He asked if I wanted to get dinner, and I said yes. We drove into town and found a diner with red booths and fluorescent lights. We ordered burgers and talked about his current project, a garage conversion for a couple with a new baby. He was excited about the details, the way he had figured out how to bring in daylight without sacrificing privacy, the built-in storage that made the small space work. I listened and asked questions, and watched him describe the work with a humility I had not seen before. The arrogance was still there, but softer now, tempered by the knowledge that there was always more to learn. We finished our meal and stepped out into the night. The streets were quiet. A light rain had started, the kind that mists more than falls. He turned to me and said, "I am sorry it took so long. It took the time it took. I wish I had not been so stupid." "You were not stupid. You were young. There is a difference." He smiled, small and sad. "I used to think I was smarter than you." "I know. I was wrong." "You were not entirely wrong. You are smart. You just were not wise. And now? Now you are learning the difference." We said goodnight and drove our separate ways. I watched his taillights disappear into the rain and felt something close to peace. Months turned into a year. My son continued to grow in his work and in his maturity. We stayed in regular contact, meeting for coffee or walking job sites together. The distance that had defined our relationship slowly closed. It was not a dramatic reconciliation. It was quieter than that. A series of small conversations and shared silences and moments where we understood each other without needing to explain. One afternoon, he called and said he had been offered a position at a mid-sized firm with a strong reputation for sustainable design. It was a good opportunity, a step forward in his career. He asked if I thought he should take it. "Do you want to take it?" I asked. "I think so, but I wanted your opinion." "My opinion is that you should trust yourself. You have earned that." "That means a lot." "It is true." He took the job. I helped him negotiate the offer and introduced him to a few people at the firm who I knew from conference circuits and project collaborations. But the job was his. He earned it through his work and his growth and his willingness to learn from his mistakes. The last time I saw Marcus was at a symposium on adaptive reuse. We sat in the back row and listened to a series of presentations on historic preservation and contemporary intervention. Afterward, we went for a drink at a hotel bar with low lighting and leather chairs. "How is your son doing?" Marcus asked. "Better. Much better." "Good. I am glad the rejection did not break him. It was exactly what he needed." Marcus raised his glass. "To necessary failures." I clinked my glass against his. "To necessary failures." We drank in comfortable silence. Then Marcus said, "You handled that well. The whole thing. A lot of fathers would have intervened." "I almost did." "But you did not." "No." "Why?" "Because he needed to learn that the world doesn't owe him anything. That respect is earned, not inherited. And that sometimes the best thing a father can do is step back and let his son figure it out." Marcus nodded. "That is wisdom. That is survival." We finished our drinks and said goodnight. I walked back to my hotel through streets slick with rain. The city glowed in the dark, 1,000 windows lit against the night. I thought about my son and the man he was becoming. I thought about the buildings we would both leave behind, the work that would outlast us and speak for us when we were gone. I thought about legacy and what it meant to be a father, and the quiet satisfaction of knowing that I had done the thing that mattered most. I had let him go. And in letting go, I had given him the chance to find his way back. The rain fell soft and steady. I walked slowly, in no hurry to be anywhere but here, in this moment, in this city we both called home. And for the first time in years, I felt something like contentment. My son would be fine. He would build his career with patience and humility and the kind of quiet confidence that comes from knowing your own limitations. He would make mistakes and learn from them. He would create work that mattered, not because of my name, but because of his own commitment to the craft. And when people asked about him, they would not say he was my son first. They would say he was a talented architect who earned his place through hard work and integrity. And that would be legacy enough. I reached my hotel and stood for a moment under the awning, watching the rain silver the empty street. Then I went inside, rode the elevator to my floor, and slept the deep, dreamless sleep of a man who has done what needed to be done, and done it well.